2019?
It is virtually the same. It makes a very modest improvement in the Dayton area, and it brings together more African American voters in the Toledo area, I believe. But it is still an extreme 12-to-4 map. It does not create competitive districts.
Jim, I would add to that that the fundamental problem that I see here is that the Republican majority is just not listening. They're not listening. People in the state of Ohio don't care what the results of the last election cycle were. They don't care about the political baseball. What they want are fair districts. And at the end of the day, whether you're talking about 319 or 369, you don't have fair districts. And when you look at what's happening in Washington, D.C., rather than regurgitate all the percentage changes in each of these districts, which are minuscule, the number that I would throw out to you is 12%. 12% is the approval rating of the United States Congress. Why is that? Because you have finger pointing, you have acrimony, you have inaction, you have inefficiency, and the result of that results from partisan gridlock, which is perpetuated by a map such as this. At the end of the day, if we're going to free up the logjam that exists in Washington, D.C., the only way to do that is fair districts at the state level, and so far they're unwilling to compromise.
Would this be better decided by a court?
We would prefer to keep matters out of the courts. We prefer to have the legislature do its job, which is to come up with fair competitive districts so that people can vote and have their vote count. It's the legislature's responsibility to do that.
But if that doesn't happen?
If that doesn't happen, we'll go forward with the referendum, and I'm sure the courts will be involved.
You know, this is a flawed process by nature, and that's been a big part of the conversation, is how do we get beyond the whole process where, you know, he who is the majority holds the pen. It's why we keep coming to this, you know, position over and over again. And it makes it challenging, of course, to meet the responsibility of making sure that we have fair and appropriate representation for all the citizens around the state of Ohio. Speaking to the point that the leader was making in terms of having value to the vote and not just, you know, it being a mechanical process for you to go and cast your vote, understanding that, you know, it will likely not be impactful if it has nothing to do with the majority population there. But recognizing that it was a flawed process and recognizing that it is political and that we are the minority, there were great pains taken to participate within those parameters and to be extremely reasonable and rational in our requests. And we knew what we would not get. What we were trying to do was get within a reasonable margin, you know, and defined by the League of Women Voters, you know, 5% on, you know, either side. And that was the tweaking that we were requesting, was to get within that field on the 6 districts that were supposed to be competitive, so that they legitimately would be, and, you know, there would be an external third party to validate and to say, you know, yes, we do feel that these are competitive. And not only could we not get there, but, you know, didn't even receive the respect of a response other than hearing it from the press.
And just to comment further on something that Tracy said, the process is flawed, and the League of Women Voters and we in the House worked very hard in the last session, despite what some of the media have forgotten. We passed a resolution out of the House on a bipartisan basis to change the process, to create objective criteria, to modify the Constitution so that going forward we would take politics out of the efforts to draw legislative boundaries. Our bill, our resolution, was not acted upon. It was killed in the Senate, and so we end up with a flawed process today. But the process needs to be changed, and if nothing else, we hope that this entire exercise will focus the people of Ohio and voters on the fact that we need a new process to draw lines, one that removes politics and creates objective criteria for the drawing of the lines that creates competitive districts throughout the state.
So from your perspective, where are we at this point? Is there any room for compromise? Does it focus on the referendum? From your perspective, where are things?
We came in with what I think anybody looking at it, I challenge anybody to suggest that it was not a very, very fair proposal. As I said, it creates 6 competitive districts that all lean Republican. It allows voters to make the choice for their members of Congress. And there was no effort, nobody came back to us from the Republican side to say, we don't like this or that. They rejected it, period. And it leaves us without much alternative at this point. I mean, I'm open, but we've tried.
Can the Republicans come up with a new map, whether it's the one they presented today or some other version or whatever, and pass it without an emergency? Let it take effect in 90 days. And that would then get rid of the old new map, the one that's subject to a referendum right now. I mean, can they just basically just keep coming up with new maps?
I think that was probably the motivation now in retrospect for what was attempted today. I think it's an effort to avoid allowing the people of Ohio to weigh in on the extremely partisan gerrymandered map that they adopted. In the same way that I'm concerned about the comments that I've heard made on the Republican side about coming back and reintroducing Senate Bill 5 in pieces after it goes down on next Tuesday. When the people of Ohio are being disrespected by legislators, that's a bad thing for Ohio.
Everybody knew the timeline for this. You knew it when you were Speaker. Both parties got the exact same amount of money. Why have we never had a news conference where the Democrats came out and said, here would be our perfect map?
We were trying to work in a way that didn't box in the Republicans. We were trying to work effectively and quietly. Given the thin skins of some, we felt that if we went public too early, we would cause the Republicans to pull back. So we decided, rightly or wrongly, that we should try to work behind the scenes to come up with something that could pass. Unfortunately, they simply rejected our efforts, so we are now coming forward at this date.
Do you regret that now? Do you wish that you had come forth with a...
No, I think we did the right thing trying to work something out. The public wants Democrats and Republicans to work together, and that's exactly what we did. We tried to work together. We made a very rational, very reasonable proposal without thumping our chests and dragging it through the media. We tried to do something in a way that would invite the Republicans to work with us. Unfortunately, they've just simply rejected our efforts.
Could you tell us how the process worked? I mean, we keep hearing that supposedly Sandra Williams was going back and forth between your office and the Speaker. How did you meet face-to-face with the Speaker at any point to negotiate, or was all of this done through the Black Caucus?
There was a meeting with leadership of the House, the Senate, and the Republican and Senate leadership. But following that meeting, there was most of the work was done from that point forward with Representative Williams representing the Democratic Party, the House, and the petitioners.
Was that at his request, or was that something that you worked out with Representative Williams?
Speaker Batchelder, I think, was more comfortable with that approach.
And let me clarify.
But
There
we,
was-
and we work very comfortably and closely with Representative Williams.
There was consensus throughout the entire process between the House Democratic Caucus, the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, the OLBC is part of the House Democratic Caucus, so there was nothing that was presented by Representative Williams. I was in the room, there were other members of the caucus in the room as well, and there was not a time that anything was presented that was not known to and agreed to by the leader.
And Representative Hurd, of course, is the whip in the House.
You talk about the flawed processes. Do you think, in hindsight, there's anything more you could have done when you were in charge to try to resolve differences between Senate and House versions of reforming this process?
We, as I said, we were, and I personally worked long and hard to try to come up with a compromise plan to reform the process, because it must be reformed. And the House passed a very good plan that I believe the League of Women Voters and other groups, good government groups, will tell you they strongly support it, because we had a plan that would have created and maximized competitive districts throughout Ohio. The House, unlike the Senate, could only pass a resolution on a bipartisan basis. We did. We passed our version with Democrats and Republicans alike. The Senate killed it. After our bill was not adopted in the Senate, we worked from that point forward to try to reach a compromise with the Senate. And I believe that we were actually very close to compromise when the elections started to get closer. And at that point, when I tried to bring the House back together, the Republicans in the House were not willing to move forward with us any longer.
And I'd like to clarify one comment from the speaker that I'm aware he made during the gaggle, that we ran out of time in our negotiations. We've been available and present and engaged the whole time, so I'm not certain how that actually would be correct.
Yeah, because he said he didn't